You won't notice it at first. It doesn't start with betrayal or drama. It starts with charm, with warmth, with that rare feeling of being seen. A modern woman can make a man feel like the universe finally sent him home. She studies your words, mirrors your rhythm, makes you believe you found peace after chaos. And that illusion, that exquisite feeling of being understood, is how the destruction begins. Because in that moment, you open the gates. You hand over the keys to your world without even realizing it. You start explaining yourself, revealing your plans, your fears, your flaws. You think you're building intimacy, but what you're actually doing is building an emotional blueprint she'll one day use to control you. Modern relationships have traded honesty for strategy. What used to be connection has become psychology. And no one studies that psychology more obsessively than the modern woman, not because she's evil, but because the culture trained her to. She's been told since childhood that her survival depends not on partnership, but on leverage. That love isn't about harmony, it's about control. Look around. Everything she consumes, media, influencers, entertainment, teaches her how to analyze, test, and manipulate masculine energy. She's rewarded for it. She's told that vulnerability in men is a weapon she can use, not a quality she can cherish. So by the time she meets you, she's already equipped with strategies, not sincerity. At first, it feels exciting. You tell yourself she's passionate, opinionated, independent. You admire her fire. You tell your friends, she challenges me. But you don't realize that behind every challenge is a subtle reshaping of your identity. Each time you adapt to her moods, compromise your boundaries, or explain your intentions, you lose a fragment of yourself. And the more you comply, the less she respects you. That's the first truth men never want to face. A woman cannot love a man she controls. She may enjoy the power, but she cannot desire what she dominates. So the cycle begins. She tests, you explain. She withdraws, you chase. She criticizes, you fix. And each time you shrink a little more. You tell yourself you're being mature, patient, understanding, but really, you're being retrained. That's how modern women destroy men. Not with cruelty, but with conditioning. They make you believe that love must be earned through emotional labor, that masculinity must be negotiated through apology, that peace only comes when she approves. And when you finally internalize that lie, you start managing your life around her emotional climate instead of your own purpose. By the time you realize it, you're not leading anymore. You're performing, not living, just reacting. And that's when the erosion begins. It always starts small, little concessions that don't seem like much. You cancel a gym session because she says she misses you. You stop talking to a female friend because she feels disrespected. You change the way you dress because she says it makes her uncomfortable. None of it sounds like control. It sounds like love. But love that demands you shrink is not love. It's possession wearing a perfume of affection. The modern man mistakes peace for permission. He thinks avoiding conflict will save the relationship. But every time you silence yourself to keep her calm, you train her to believe that her emotions are law and your boundaries are negotiable. That's how the destruction accelerates, quietly, through your own good intentions. Here's the paradox. Modern women say they want strong men, yet they unconsciously destroy every ounce of strength they find. They want leaders who never lead, protectors who never say no, warriors who never fight back. They want authority without authority's discomfort. Because deep down, modern conditioning has turned too many women into emotional anarchists. They crave order, but rebel against it when it appears. You'll see it in how she argues. She doesn't seek resolution, she seeks dominance. She doesn't want truth, she wants validation. And if you offer logic, she calls it cold. If you remain calm, she calls it detached. If you assert yourself, she calls it controlling. That's not communication, it's psychological warfare disguised as intimacy. And the average man, he gives in. Not because he's weak, but because he's tired. He's been taught that male assertiveness is aggression, that disagreeing is disrespect, that silence is safety. But safety isn't peace, it's paralysis. And over time, paralysis kills your drive, your ambition, your focus. You stop taking risks. You stop dreaming. You stop doing anything that could trigger another emotional storm. That's how the modern woman destroys men, not by taking their money or cheating on them, but by exhausting their spirit, by turning love into negotiation and affection into accountability. Men used to build empires for love. Now they build justifications. They explain, they apologize, they adapt. They think they're fixing the relationship, but they're only reinforcing dependency. She becomes the center, and he becomes the orbit. And once a man loses his orbit, he loses everything. Modern women will tell you they want equality, but equality without accountability becomes entitlement. They want men to provide emotional stability while they provide emotional chaos. They want men who understand their trauma while refusing to understand male pressure. They demand empathy but rarely offer respect. And yet, none of this starts from evil. It starts from confusion. Because society told both men and women the same lie, that power matters more than peace. That love is a competition instead of cooperation. The tragedy? Both lose. She loses her ability to admire, and he loses his ability to lead. She becomes restless, and he becomes numb. She starts looking for excitement elsewhere, and he starts looking for escape through work, distractions, or silence. That silence is what she calls emotional distance. But it's not distance, it's grief. It's the sound of a man mourning himself while still alive. Every man who's ever loved deeply will recognize the next stage. It's when you start living two lives inside one body. On the outside, you nod, smile, agree. You say what keeps the peace, but inside, you're shrinking, editing your every word before it leaves your mouth. You rehearse your tone. You apologize for feelings you didn't cause. You begin to live cautiously, like a man tiptoeing through his own home, and she doesn't see the damage. To her, you look calmer, more understanding. She thinks the relationship is improving because arguments have stopped. She doesn't realize she's no longer speaking to a man. She's speaking to his survival instinct. Men don't break loudly. They fade. They stop laughing from their stomach. They stop talking about their dreams. They stop making decisions. It's not fear, it's fatigue. You can't lead and walk on eggshells at the same time. Here's what makes modern relationships so psychologically heavy. The emotional transaction has replaced genuine connection. Each partner is subconsciously keeping score. Who listened more? Who texted first? Who apologized? Love used to be about merging lives. Now it's about managing grievances. When a man lives like this for too long, his nervous system starts to change. He becomes hyper-vigilant. Every sigh, every silence, every "we need to talk" sends adrenaline through his veins. He's not fighting an argument anymore. He's fighting for identity. And that constant vigilance kills his creativity, his joy, his sense of purpose. That's the real destruction modern men face. It's not material, it's existential. You can rebuild money, you can rebuild muscle, but when a man stops believing in his own judgment, he's spiritually bankrupt. Most men won't even realize how far they've fallen until they find themselves explaining to a woman why they deserve to rest. Think about that, explaining peace as if it were a privilege. Modern women often mistake this exhaustion for apathy. They'll say, "You don't care anymore," not realizing they've drained the well dry. Because for many of them, emotional attention has become currency. It's how they measure love. And the man, desperate to keep the relationship alive, keeps spending until he's empty. The saddest part? Once he's fully drained, she'll leave anyway. Not out of malice, but out of instinct. Because the energy that once drew her to him, the confidence, the drive, the unpredictability, is gone. She'll say he changed. In reality, she trained him to. So he walks away with the haunting realization that the very love he gave was the weapon used to destroy him. He learns too late that boundaries are the backbone of attraction, and that peace bought with self-betrayal always ends in resentment. But here's where insight begins. Destruction can be data. If a man studies how he was broken, he can learn how to rebuild differently. The key is not to hate women, it's to understand the design. The modern woman is not the enemy. She's a mirror of the culture that made her. She's the product of a society that glorifies independence but starves intimacy, that rewards emotional performance but punishes vulnerability. She's been told to pursue validation, not connection. And a man who doesn't understand this will keep fighting symptoms instead of the system. The antidote isn't bitterness, it's awareness. Because once you see the game, you stop playing it. Awareness changes everything. The minute a man wakes up to what's really happening, the battlefield shifts. He begins to see the pattern, the subtle emotional tests, the small shifts in tone, the invisible power exchanges that used to fly right over his head. It's like suddenly seeing the strings in a puppet show he's been part of for years. And that realization doesn't make him angry. It makes him quiet. Because now he understands something modern men rarely do, that not every argument is about what it seems. The fight about the dishes isn't about dishes. The tension about your tone isn't about words. It's about control. It's about seeing whether your frame will bend. It's about testing the boundaries of your patience to find the edges of your strength. When a man doesn't see this, he reacts. When he does, he observes. That's how power returns, not through aggression, but through stillness. The moment you stop being reactive, you break the emotional feedback loop that fuels her dominance. Modern women are used to emotional choreography. They provoke, you respond, and that response feeds their sense of relevance. But when you stand firm, calm, grounded, something inside them shifts. They can't find your buttons anymore. And once a woman can't manipulate your emotional state, she either grows or leaves. Either outcome is victory. But men need to understand something deeper. You can't lead a woman if you're afraid of losing her. Fear of loss is the leash most women feel wrapped around men's necks. That's why she can pull away, knowing you'll chase. That's why she can criticize, knowing you'll explain. That's why she can withdraw, knowing you'll beg. But when you master detachment, you rewrite the entire dynamic. Detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's saying, I choose you, but I don't need you to choose me to stay whole. That's power. That's what modern relationships are missing. Interdependence, not dependence. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Modern women weren't trained for love. They were trained for leverage. And men weren't trained for leadership. They were trained for approval. So both sexes walk into relationships seeking control, not connection, and call the resulting chaos compatibility. A man who reclaims leadership doesn't do it through dominance. He does it through discipline. He stops chasing emotional highs and starts setting emotional standards. He doesn't argue about tone or mood swings. He decides what kind of energy he allows into his life. He stops begging for understanding and starts demanding alignment. Modern women destroy men's lives not by force but by fatigue. So if you want to survive modern love, you have to become unexhaustible, not by hardening, but by mastering emotional efficiency. Stop pouring energy into proving your innocence, your loyalty, your good heart. Prove your worth to yourself through purpose, not persuasion. The modern man's resurrection starts the moment he decides his life's mission will no longer revolve around female validation. Because the second a woman realizes she is not the center of your world, she'll either evolve to fit into it or exit. Both serve your peace. You can't save a woman from her programming. You can only refuse to be destroyed by it. That's the psychological turning point every man must reach. The day you stop trying to fix her mood and start protecting your mind, you become free. And from that freedom, real love, not performance, not power struggle, not dependence, finally becomes possible. When a man reaches clarity, everything about him changes quietly. He stops explaining himself so much. He moves slower, speaks less, listens more. He doesn't raise his voice because he doesn't need to. The energy that used to go into defending his decisions now goes into refining them. He starts living from the inside out instead of outside in. And people notice. Friends say he seems distant. Women say he's different. What they really mean is that he's stopped being predictable. His sense of peace is no longer for sale. You can't guilt him into doing things he doesn't want to do. You can't flatter him into losing focus. His boundaries are no longer walls, they're architecture. They hold up his life. That's when power returns in its healthiest form, not control over others, but control over self. The modern world has confused dominance with steadiness, but they're nothing alike. Dominance is fear-based, steadiness is purpose-based. When a man becomes steady, women feel it before they see it. Some feel safe in it, others feel exposed by it. Either way, it separates what's real from what's performative. The modern woman's conditioning struggles with this kind of man because he breaks the pattern. She's used to emotional chess. But when her opponent refuses to play, her strategy collapses. And here's where the deeper psychology comes in. Most women don't want to destroy men. They destroy what they don't understand. They destroy calm because chaos is familiar. They destroy stability because they equate peace with boredom. But a man who truly knows himself doesn't take it personally. He recognizes projection for what it is, a reflection of internal unrest. He learns that compassion doesn't mean compliance. He can love her without losing himself, care for her without carrying her storms, listen without absorbing. When he operates from that space, he becomes untouchable in the best way. His work improves because he's not constantly distracted by emotional turbulence. His friendships deepen because they're no longer based on complaining. His body heals because his nervous system finally rests. He realizes how much energy he used to spend trying to fix people who didn't want to be fixed. That's the stage psychologists call integration. It's when the masculine stops oscillating between extremes, between the overly nice and the overly detached, and becomes centered. Centered men are dangerous only to illusions. They can't be seduced by attention or manipulated by guilt. They see modern relationships for what they are, spiritual negotiations disguised as romance. When a man lives like this, he no longer fears women's disappointment. He respects it, but he doesn't surrender to it. And that's when attraction shifts from anxiety to admiration. Women might resist this new energy at first, but the ones with emotional maturity eventually lean into it. Because deep down, even the most modern woman still longs for a man she can trust, and trust can't exist without strength. The irony is that once you stop needing to prove yourself to women, they begin to see your worth on their own. That's not arrogance, it's nature. Value seen is value earned, not negotiated. So the man who once lived in emotional survival starts to live in sovereignty. His peace is not conditional, his joy is not reactive. He leads not by authority, but by example. That's the man the modern world quietly fears and secretly needs. When a man reaches that state of centered calm, his whole view of the world rearranges. He sees that everything he was ever taught about love was inverted. He was told that sacrifice equals affection, that compromise equals maturity, that emotional transparency equals intimacy. But what he finally understands is that love without boundaries is self-erasure, and self-erasure breeds resentment. So he stops chasing the fantasy of being understood. He realizes that women will never fully understand men, just as men will never fully understand women, and that's okay. Harmony doesn't come from perfect understanding, it comes from mutual respect. It comes from polarity, the magnetic tension between strength and softness, logic and emotion, order and spontaneity. The modern world killed polarity when it told both genders to become the same, but sameness breeds conflict, not connection. A man who reclaims polarity doesn't try to compete with women or dominate them. He simply stands firm in what he is. He stops apologizing for his masculinity. He stops softening his tone to be less intimidating. He stops making his purpose smaller to make his partner feel safe. Because safety built on lies isn't safety, it's sedation. And as he lives more truthfully, something profound happens. He becomes rare, the kind of man who doesn't flinch under pressure, doesn't chase approval, doesn't trade his integrity for temporary peace. Other men start to notice it too. They come to him for advice, for direction, for clarity. They sense something ancient in him, a steadiness the modern age has tried to erase. That's how leadership is reborn, not through status, but through substance. A man like this doesn't need to preach masculinity. He embodies it. He works, he protects, he provides, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, but always deliberately. He carries weight without complaint. He moves with calm precision. He's not perfect, but he's whole. And that wholeness has ripple effects. Women around him either rise or recoil. The ones who rise soften, not because he demands it, but because his steadiness makes chaos feel pointless. The ones who recoil try to provoke him, but his peace absorbs it like a black hole. They can't break what doesn't resist. Psychologically, this kind of man forces everyone around him to evolve. His energy doesn't fight, it transforms. That's why his presence alone can expose weakness in others. He becomes a living mirror of everything they avoid confronting. And because of that, he must carry solitude like a shield. Power isolates, but only until you learn to walk with it quietly. He learns to protect his focus the way he once protected love. He no longer entertains drama because he knows attention is fuel, and wherever he directs it, life grows. So he directs it toward creation, toward building, toward mastery, toward legacy. The man who once wasted his energy proving his worth to modern women now pours it into building a world that doesn't need their approval. He learns that his greatest revenge is evolution. And ironically, the women who once drained him now chase men like him. But they can't reach them anymore, because he's not playing the same game. He's not running on validation, he's running on purpose. And purpose has gravity. It pulls everything meant for him closer, and everything false away. This is where the story shifts, from destruction to rebirth. Because every man who's ever been broken by modern relationships has within him the capacity to become unbreakable, not by hardening his heart, but by mastering it. That's how you rebuild after being destroyed, by making peace with pain until pain becomes wisdom.